Welcome to the Lebra Podcast, where education leaders explore the intersection of culture, strategy, and innovation in today's schools. I'm your host, Nate Lichte, and in each episode, we'll uncover the leadership habits, systems, and bold ideas that help districts thrive. Spencer, welcome to the Lebra Podcast. Thanks so much for sitting down with us today. Maybe for our listeners, would you mind kind of introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your background and what really led to the superintendency?
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. First of all, this is a wonderful opportunity to share some thoughts, and people that know me know that I have plenty of them. But yeah, superintendency. To me, it wasn't necessarily a planned process. I didn't, start off 35 years ago thinking that superintendency was the goal, the ambition. But I grew up in Southern Michigan. Um, I was very involved. I think this goes back to high school for me. I mean, I really enjoyed my experience in high school. I enjoyed being a part of athletics and activities. And, I try to, one of the things I try to replicate with our own school districts is I had fun going to school, you know? And nowadays, the shame of it all is that I don't see that in all of the kids' faces that are entering our different school buildings throughout the day. So that's kind of my challenge is, school should be fun. And that kind of prompted me to go to Olivet College down the road, and I played some athletics there and got my education degree. And even back then, when I was 19, 20, 21, I kind of knew that I wanted to be a teacher and I wanted to be a coach because of those folks that influenced me when I was in high school. My head football coach was a big influence on me. Some of our teachers, my English teacher, Dr. Seal, I still communicate with him today on Facebook, almost 40 years later.
Wow.
So there was a lot of, I think, and I also warned our teachers, our younger teachers, be careful what you say to kids because you really, even when you're not talking about your content or your class, you really have a profound impact on our kids much more than we really want to, assume. But yeah, good role models in high school, had a good college experience, and really I just set off to want to be a good teacher and a good coach. My dad was in the education industry. He worked for the University of Michigan for 20 years. He was a director of the art and architecture building. So kind of come from a little bit of an educational family. But also I was a part of a big family. I was the youngest of 8 kids. That was an interesting experience, and I think that had something to do with, wanting to be, service oriented and wanting to get into a career or a field where, you feel like you're giving back and you're trying to build, young men and women to be productive members of society. But, the interesting part of my career, and I don't wanna spend too much time on this, but I ended up going to, Illinois, after graduating from Olivet College in Southern Michigan, and I thought, I was young and single and boy, this would be an interesting experience, and, ended up spending 28 years in the suburbs of Chicago. And I started off, as a teacher and coach, coaching football, basketball, and baseball almost every year of those 15 years of being a high school teacher. And then, got my master's degree. It just felt that it was time. I'd felt after 15 years that I could give, instead of just teaching high school students, I felt, I could start influencing adults, other teachers, being a teacher leader, I had the confidence after 15 years of getting my master's degree in education administration. And
Wow.
then shortly after that, I jumped to becoming an athletic director, which seemed to be kind of in my wheelhouse at that time, being so involved in high school education and coaching athletics. That seemed to be a natural step for me. But then what you find once you open up that administrative door, that they'll find other things for you to do, right? Good superintendents will. So I quickly took on some assistant principal roles as a very young man, evaluating teachers, Charlotte Danielson training, the whole 9 yards, and that kind of went from AD to AP to building principal, and, so that was my next 10 years, of kinda going through that administrative hierarchy, climbing that ladder, and then at that time, I started rubbing elbows with superintendents and started talking more about, a district vision and how everything fits together and how complicated it is to run a high functioning, school district, and that started to interest me a little bit, so I got an educational specialist degree, after about 10 years of building administration, and then quickly jumped to a superintendent. I became a superintendent in a small school district in Southern Illinois, and then finished my career in Illinois at a larger school district. But then I retired from Illinois after 28 years, and my wife and I we have young kids. They're actually graduating this year. They're high school seniors here in Cheboygan. So, you know, we moved to Northern Michigan. So I'm kind of 1 foot in retirement, 1 foot out. I got about 4 or 5 years before I really think I can contemplate, retirement, but definitely on the back 9 in my career. But now I'm looking at, like, for example, I'm an MASA, superintendent mentor. So I'm
Yeah.
mentoring a superintendent via Zoom mostly, in Southern Illinois. I'm looking to try to build some young administrators here, and really, it's just to me, it's about, my legacy now, kind of,
Yeah.
what can I do, to increase my circle of influence, right? I started off in a very, in a classroom, and now I'm essentially leading a district with, we have about 1,600 kids, 200 employees. We're one of the largest employers in Northern Michigan in our region. So there's a big responsibility there, and there's all the other variables that go along with that. But that's how I ended up being here. Really love Northern Michigan. Love the school district. Cheboygan School Board has been great to me, very easy to work with. That also makes my job easier as a superintendent, is to have a school board that can be they're very students first. So a lot of our decisions are rooted in what's best for kids.
So tell us a little bit about some folks who aren't familiar with Northern Michigan and Sheboygan. Can you tell us a little bit about the district, the community, and a little bit more about where you're living now?
Yeah, definitely. We're in the northeastern section of Michigan. Our COPESD, our regional office, governs 10 school districts. We are the second largest of the 10. Up here in Northern Michigan, there's a lot of school districts that are really, really small.
Yeah.
And sometimes the superintendent has a dual role. They have a superintendent slash principal, but it's a great place to get started. If you're looking to be a superintendent, you may have to, like I moved to Southern Illinois to get that first job. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to when you get to those where the scarcity is a little bit greater. But we have a lot of superintendents that are superintendents slash principals. I fortunately am not. We're big enough to where we have a small district office that governs our 4 buildings. We have an elementary, an intermediate, a high school. We also have an alternative education building too. So that's great. But in comparison to the other school districts, we're the second largest. The only one larger than us is Gaylord. I think has maybe 2,500 students. We have 1,600 students. So, but after that, the other 8 school districts that are in our region, some of them, for example, Vanderbilt has 30 students in their high school.
Wow.
So imagine that just changes the dynamics of the problem, right? I mean, you got a whole bunch of different stuff. Instead of having a math department, you have a math teacher that
Yeah.
literally cannot get involved with PLCs and cannot work with colleagues because they're singlet. So there's different challenges for those smaller schools. But as far as why I'm here is it's just a wonderful. The people are great. Sheboygan in particular is a summer town. We are um, 15 miles east of Mackinac City. So, Mackinac City becomes the 7th largest city in the state of Michigan in the summer. So, everybody's going to Mackinac City so they can take the ferry over to Mackinac Island. And but we are still a tourist town, even though we're a little bit off the beaten track. I think a lot of people who don't want to live in the hustle bustle area of Mackinac City in the summer, they've bought cabins and summer places in our area, a little bit more affordable, a little bit more off the beaten track. But at summer, our population probably triples. And in the winter, and once the school year comes back around, we have a lot of just summer second home cabin type folks. We have Mullet Lake and Burt Lake, which are 2 of the largest inland lakes in the state of Michigan. So a lot of summer activity here. But the students that stick around in the winter, the fall, winter, and spring, and are educated, I think a lot of them, our more affluent population leaves and goes back home, whoever that might be, central or southern Michigan. But our service people, our blue collar people, which are the heart of our town, they stay here, and the winters can be can be rough. This last winter, we had the blizzard, which we were out 5 days, and then most recently, 2 weeks ago, we had a flooding, in our area that they're still
Yeah.
trying to recover from. So the winter can be challenging to our kids, but we have a really strong, blue collar feel, um, very, they support their kids, they support their schools, and we're doing some really good stuff here to try to offer the best educational opportunities that we possibly can, to our kids, which, we have a high poverty rate. It's probably 80%,
Oh,
and we have a high special education population that requires a lot of services. So, but I think we offer. I think we're doing a good job. I think most people from the outside in would be happy with the work that we've been doing, at least since I've been here, and this is my 3rd year now in Cheboygan.
absolutely. So talk to me. I want to switch gears a little bit. Since you've been at the districts, working now, you mentioned 3 years. So talk to me about, when you're coming into a district and you're working to build district culture really from the ground up, right? Because you're migrating to the community, you've got some familiarity with Michigan and the area, but you're still coming into, when you're in this style of community that has a large, unique rural population. So talk to me about how do you build that culture, and what were some of the things that you did when you first arrived at Sheboygan?
Yeah, and I think that's really important, especially if you are. I mean, if your focus is to be a superintendent someday and you're starting off, and this is my 3rd school district as a superintendent, and I can tell you I made a lot of mistakes during my first superintendency, and in particular during my first year, because I went into it like with a mindset that it's like running a building when I was a building principal, right? And it's significantly different. It's just such a unique and challenging position. I love being a superintendent. I think with 35 years of education, this job challenges me every day.
Yeah.
So I have purpose. I have a hop in my step in the mornings when I come to work. I know I'm needed, and I know I can be helpful. But one of the biggest mistakes that young superintendents make moving into their first superintendency, which I went through that learning curve, was just thinking that maybe you know more than you know, when the reality is, you just need to listen. I think the most important thing that you can do, and I was just talking to our regional superintendent here, Jamie Huber, and he coined the phrase, you're on the listening tour. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, well, the first 6 months to a year of your superintendency, just keep your mouth closed and listen, because they'll tell you what they need. And if you listen close enough, and you listen to the right groups, you'll find out what your job is. The biggest mistake a superintendent can make is going into a new district and thinking you have the silver bullet, or thinking you have the answer, when the reality is the part of your job is to discover what you need to be as the superintendent. And really, I think back to the Batman movie, when Batman said, I'm whatever Gotham needs me to be. I feel that way sometimes. I feel like I'm whatever Sheboygan needs me to be today, and that is to keep our school district pointed in the right direction, to try to get a little bit better every day, and to get better every day, I think you need to be consistent. Show up every day. Sometimes the needle moves forward a little bit more today than it might tomorrow, and maybe tomorrow it might even go backwards. But you got to show up every day, because legitimate change in the school district takes time. And I'm in my 3rd year, and we're really starting to, I think, feel and see the fruits of our labor. The foundation that we set in year 1 is now starting to come to fruition, and it takes time. If you want to be a superintendent and you're looking for fast wins, probably not a good position for you. You have to set the foundation, and it all starts with coming in and listening. And it's also, you have to be, you have to be very intentional about who you're listening to, right? Not just, don't listen to Facebook.
Yeah.
So, but talk to your school board. Have coffee with individual school board members. Ask them, why did you get on the school board? What is your purpose? What do you hope to accomplish as a school board member? So I always start with that. I have a great school board now. They're very like-minded. We all have our duties and our roles and responsibilities now. We know where we all fit into the group. But then also it's the same thing. I'm very collaborative with my building principals. That's my most inner circle. I meet with them at least once every 2 weeks, just the 5 of us. Then my circle expands a little bit more to my cabinet, which we meet once a month, but that's all of my administrators, instructional and non-instructional. And then really the big thing I think that I learned best, and most, as I'm getting more experienced, is really making a concerted effort to connect with the community. Uh, I joined my first year, I intentionally joined the Chamber of Commerce. I joined the Rotary. I'm not from this area, so I'm from Southern Michigan, so I wanted to get down on the ground level
Yeah.
with parents and community members, not just parents, but be exposed to community members. And one of the things I learned my first year that I think was very important was, that we, as business goes, are, as the schools go. So kind of my motto the first year was, getting involved with the Chamber of Commerce. One of the things that's very big to Cheboygan, which I would have not learned otherwise, was restoring their downtown area, which I learned the history, and they're currently in the middle of this process, but their downtown area is flourished in the last 5 years. And it's these people that come in the summer are now buying businesses and storefronts, and this is a place to be and live. But I often say this is a great place to come and vacation in the summer, but we're also adding to that is, and we just put it up on a billboard out here on I-75, it's a great place to play, but it's also a great place to work. It's also a great place to go to school. So we're really trying to look at, we wanna be the destination district in the northeastern region of the school districts that are available, and we think we are. We offer more CTE programs, than any other school district in our region, including Gaylord, which is bigger than us. CTE is, that really fits with our culture too,
Wow.
with our color background. We have a great welding program, automotive program. We have a culinary program that is completely student-led. We have a bookstore that is completely student-led. We have just amazing CTE programs, and we just got the 61V grant, and we're looking to expand our CTE offerings to the middle school starting next year.
Wow.
So I think that is a wonderful opportunity, and for people who wanna move from Central Michigan or Southern Michigan, are looking for a school district that may be more like the one that they might see in Central Michigan, I think Cheboygan is the one, because we're big enough where we can offer these CT programs, still have competitive athletics and activities and music and band, and still offer AP classes. And we also added our early middle college program. So that's been a wonderful addition. We got kids that extra fifth year. We actually we average about 100 kids per grade level, and 20 of them are going off to our first cohort. When they graduate in May, they're going off to either Alpena Community College or North Central, and they're gonna get that 5th year free through the early middle college program, which is significant for our population. Again, 80% poverty. A lot of these kids are first generation college graduates. And even if and the other problem is, even if I wanna go to college, do I have the money to go to college? So we have it set up so these kids can get their freshman credits earned as juniors and seniors, go to either Alpena or North Central, and at the end of that first year, walk out with an associate's degree.
Wow.
So
That's awesome. So talk to us. So you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned kind of these listening tours that are so critical to when you're a new superintendent entering a district, and how that starts to kind of create partnerships with the community. And if you think about all of that, like that really leads to sort of that strategic plan piece
yes,
development, right? But so often that strategic plan can be something that, gets documented, put on a piece of paper, and it just goes to live in somebody's desk drawer. So
yes,
based off like, what you're telling me is, and you're starting to see some of that plan actually come to fruition now, because it does take time. It takes patience, and as you're sitting in the seat of the superintendent. Talk to me about how did you, kind of in your first 3 years here with your experience and background, kind of develop your strategic plan, and how are you ensuring that it's being executed and that you're making measurable progress towards actualization?
that's a great question, and probably the most important thing for a new superintendent. We talked about coming in and listening. Part of that is, okay, what do I do with the information once I've obtained it?
Wow.
But one of the things that I did when I walked in the doors here, in the summer before school started, my first year as superintendent, uh, I said, I met with the board and I said, let's take a look at your strategic plan. And some of them were like, what strategic plan? I'm like, okay, all right. So I know where we need to start.
Yeah.
So I started with the school board, and then I reached out to MASA and they have some wonderful folks that can come and you bring in a third party, and they can help you go through this very complex process. I
Right.
would encourage any first-year superintendent to the first thing that I mean, listening is the first part, but okay, when I want to start to move to action steps, I need you need help. In MASA and MASB, there are plenty of there's some other firms out there that will offer these services, but they'll bring in a third party, and it makes it so much easier because as a superintendent, you need to still be the superintendent. You can't be the facilitator of the process, and it's very inexpensive. I know people want to save money, but it would be the best money spent for you to get some of these seasoned pros that can come in and really just help you expedite and facilitate the process. So that's what we did. The first 6 months, I listened, and then I said, "Hey, we gotta really take a look at just blowing up this whole." The strategic plan was not um, it was not important. It was not influencing the school district. So we need to start from ground zero. So we literally just blew it up and we started having focus groups with the help of our facilitator. We had a community group, we had a student group, we had a teacher group, we had a business group. So we had I don't know, 5 or 6 meetings over the course of during the winter and going into my first year, my spring. We had and these were long meetings. We would do these after school at night on Saturdays. The community meeting we thought was real important to do on a Saturday. We thought it was important to get as many people, and it was strategic and intentional. We invited specific people, movers and shakers that I learned about through my listening tour. That we went out and sent in invitations to specific people in the community, parents, students, all that, teachers, coaches, knowing that they would have the most influence on our strategic plan. So, it was a lot, and I can see it over there over my shoulder. I got it on and the other thing is once you do it, you gotta use it, and I think a lot of people, they do the listening tour, they hire the facilitator, they get the nice piece of paper, the strategic plan, but to me, it's gotta be in front of you all the time. So if you stand in one place too long, I'll put one of our strategic plans on you, like
Yeah.
I did my refrigerator. So, we got it all throughout our district. We got it on anything that we can in our boardroom. We see it all the time. And I actually, I have like a copies of 50 copies of it where I have also broken it down into a little bit more specific we action steps. So strategic plans are typically very generalized, but if you boil them down a little bit, you can start to get and start to think of action steps. Well, if I do this, this will actually impact and move the needle for that particular strategic goal, even though that strategic goal is non-specific, but it falls underneath that umbrella. So what that allows me to do is to go to each building principal and go back to these groups and say, okay, here's our overarching strategic plan and our strategic goals.
Yeah.
But what does that mean to you specifically? What is it that you can actually do that might help move that needle? And then that's where I start to create my individual goals for building principals and buildings. Each building principal in each building takes a look at our strategic plan and I say, what does that mean to you? And how can you support that? And I want to get as specific as possible because essentially that's what I'm going to evaluate you on as a superintendent is how far can you move the needle, right? And in the right direction too. So as long as we have our ship pointed at our strategic, I call it the North Star.
Yep.
So when we're in our collaborative environments, I always say, don't forget about the North Star. How's this getting us closer to the North Star?
Yeah.
And know that that's the strategic plan and that everything should be in alignment with everything. So once you have that, I think what's most important then is you need to annually review it. And we're in my third year. It's what is wonderful is that we can go back and look at that first year strategic plan and we can literally go right down and add some of those action steps. And we can literally go right down and check those off. And it's really sad is don't forget to celebrate. We've done a lot, but we're always looking at what we can do tomorrow. But we've done so much in 2 years. It's just amazing to me when we sit down at a school board and take a look and review and say, man, look at all this stuff we've done. But I think the reason we've done it is because it was intentional. It was part of the strategic plan. And so what we do in this, we're doing it right now. I'm planning to meet with my building principals here individually. And we're going to talk about, okay, what did you get done? Let's take a look at the strategic plan. What did you get done this year? And then, but what do we need to get done next year? And I'm always about growth. I'm not when I'm trying to lead, I try to lead from the front, be authentic, and talk about how to get better. I want to spend 99% of my day talking with folks about how to get better. I think younger superintendents or even younger building principals want to get caught up in the term evaluation and all this, negative, documentation. I think if we're continually trying to look for the bright light in the room and trying to point each other in that direction, then we can all work together and collaborate. I only have issues with someone with that refuses to do that. If you're a fixed mindset and not a growth mindset, we're
Yeah.
probably not going to get along real
Yeah.
well. I want to get better, and our school district wants to get better.
Yeah. There's a couple of things you said that really stood out. I think, going back to the strategic plan piece where you talked about not only looking at these kind of strategic components that make it up, but breaking down those specific action steps that actually show how it connects to each individual role. That's how you move, you move the needle, right? It's breaking it down. So I, as a principal or I as a teacher or any role in a district, I know how I'm contributing. And I think for superintendents, especially entering superintendents who are kind of in the strategic plan development process right now, that's a huge step to once you got the plan is the connection, right? Connecting with those folks that are going to help you carry and execute that across.
Yes.
Um, so I want to kind of shift. I know like many states and many districts, Michigan has had a bit of a teacher shortage. And it's always different how this starts to impact our rural communities and our suburban districts. It's always a little bit different. Have you seen what's been the impact with teacher shortage and how has the district addressed that? Have you built some different sort of cultural components in to kind of support and address, or tell us a little bit about Cheboygan and what they're doing there?
Yeah, the teacher shortage is real. There's no doubt about it. It needs to be. I know it's at the state level. It's part of the state strategic plan
Yeah.
to address that. They've come up with some really good programs. Um, Talent Together. There's a couple of them out there. We've worked with Talent Together a couple times since I've been here, and that's a program where essentially you're looking to grow your own. Taking a look at a parapro or an aide that is interested in becoming a teacher, they can really fast track them and really subsidize them well. I wish this program was around when 35 years ago when I was paying for, college and all those expenses. It can be expensive to go back to school, especially if you're a non-traditional or an adult.
Yeah.
You got a family and you got kids and you have other expenses. So Talent Together, I think that state program has been wonderful. We've benefited through, this is my third year here. I think we've had at least 3, maybe 4, aides or parapros that we were able to hire them as an assistant teacher and then pay them, I think it's 80% of a teacher base salary while they go back to school, to earn their bachelor's degree and become a full-time teacher. So I
Wow.
think that's a great program, and that's something we have to do. The
Yeah.
one thing that's quite evident is, we're looking for teachers right now, so we have a lot of, postings out there, and 35 years ago when I entered into education, I remember one of the reasons I went to Illinois was I was a business education major, and that was an elective, and it was very difficult to find even postings to apply.
Right.
When you did apply, there were 50 applicants, it was just the competition was crazy. So that's one of the reasons that prompted me to move to Illinois, was that there were so many teachers that the market was saturated. So, now you're lucky if you get 3, 4, or 5 applicants for some of these teaching positions. And the odd thing is that maybe only 2 or 3 have the credentials and the education and the certification that the job requires. So, we've done, the state has, again, I give the credit to the state for allowing us to hire when in high need areas in particular. We can hire, teachers with emergency certifications, and then they have to go back and they have to, earn their degree while they're doing the job. So I've had to do that several times, the past 3 years. We did it with a counselor last year. We had a teacher who wanted to be a counselor, didn't get anybody who had a counseling certificate to apply. So we hired this gentleman, but with the understanding through the state that they would get an emergency certificate and that they would finish their degree within 2 to 3 years, I believe it is.
Wow.
So, but that's where it's good and it's bad. I think, everybody would love to have a highly qualified, certified teacher in front of their classroom. What we're finding right now is you gotta grow your own, and sometimes they have to learn on the go, just because there isn't enough supply to meet the demand, and, that's something, you know, I with it still concerns me, talking with some universities and colleges. The numbers are starting to go back up in education, but they're definitely not where they used to be in regards to, the number of kids graduating and wanting to go into education, and I think there's a whole bunch of reasons for that as well. But also the thing that scares me a lot, and I think we need to keep an eye on, is online school. That's taking kids out of the classroom, and there's a lot of online platforms where students can actually just essentially get their high school diploma and never leave their bedroom. That's a scary thought, and for some kids, it works. It's needed in some cases. Maybe if there's behavioral issues or social emotional issues, this is a better way than nothing at all. But I think we're getting to a point where a lot of kids are choosing online, or alternative school settings because they're just not socially, emotionally ready for the traditional setting. There
Yeah.
are a lot of kids right now post-COVID that, are still have high anxiety about being in large groups. So we find at our high school in particular that we have, some kids that might benefit from online learning because they're just having difficulty and they're having anxiety around other students. Now, that's not the best way to do it, but if that's the only way to do it, that's one of the possibilities that we're in support of. But what I'm not in support of is some of these kids that could thrive in a traditional setting, but are just lazy. They don't wanna do those things that we were asked to do pre-COVID, and they know that this vehicle is there now for their taking, for
Yeah.
their using. So we're getting kids that are choosing online over traditional setting for no real good reasons. And I think as the way that the state is currently funded, when we're talking about enrollment is significant on how much revenue that we receive
Right.
to pay our teachers each year, and we're getting kids leaving 10, 15, even if it's only 10, 15, 20, and that's $10,000 per student that we're losing, we're finding that it's difficult to maintain our staffing, right? Enrollment continues to go down, our revenue goes down, and our staffing needs go down. So we're very cognizant of that, and when we have retirements, we're very cognizant of we just don't necessarily anymore go, "Okay, somebody retired, now you gotta fill that position." It's
Yeah.
not one for one, especially in a climate where, decreasing enrollment has been, a trend, a significant trend, especially in Northern Michigan and the UP. The UP, I know the Eastern UP in particular is struggling with enrollment, numbers as well. So, having some different funding options, I know the state is talking about maybe going away from so much being invested in the enrollment or FTE part of the revenue to run a building or a district, and moving more towards, competitive grants and, just more of a general fund where, how much money do you need to run your school district and it not be so based on enrollment because that online is here, I mean, you can get a doctor's degree, a doctoral degree, and I remember when you knew it was real when you could start, fully online bachelor degree, master's degrees, and now doctoral degrees. Obviously, high school diploma was going to fall in line
Yeah.
with the direction that the entire country is going.
Yeah. It's the climate of education is in a drastic shifting point right now, right? And one of the things I keep hearing from superintendents is how they're kind of, adjusting to all those shifts and how their specific communities and organizations, their districts are impacted by it. And I think the important thing is the ones that are being successful in this period is they're out front and they're leading through that change and they're continuing the listening tours, right? Like so many times I think that like you mentioned, these listening tours are important not only in the beginning stages, but you don't stop doing that, right? Like it's a piece, especially when you're in these challenging elements and climates and things where you've got all these kind of impacts on the organizations to continue to ensure that the district is aligned with the community, that it's aligned with the diverse voices of our students, our parents, all of those different folks. So as we kind of wrap up here, I have one final question, which is, there's a number of new folks that have entered the superintendency this year. and there's a number of folks out there that are aspiring soups. If you look back on your career in Cheboygan and just your 35 years worth of education experience, what advice would you give to someone who is considering the superintendency, or is a fresh, just entered that role, or wrapped up their first year?
Yeah, I would think, it's a great opportunity, first of all. I mean, obviously, as the teacher shortage, is quite evident, that rolls into a building administrative shortage, which that rolls into a superintendent shortage, and, I know I think my job now as an elder superintendent is to try to recognize, talent when I see it. We have, 2 or 3, building administrators and or district administrators that I've targeted intentionally based on what I observed the last 2.5 years and encouraging them to get their educational specialist degree. But also, what I'm doing with them intentionally is I'm asking them to get outside of their comfort level as a building administrator or as a district level administrator. And they meet with me a little bit more. I'm actually a mentor for one of my building administrators. He's going through the superintendent program through Central Michigan, I believe, right now. So I meet with him quite often. But also, what I do is I challenge him with being a part of some of our other committee work. Right now, we are in teacher negotiations, and I know it's not his role as a building principal to participate or be expected to. He's not getting paid to be part of our teacher negotiation process, but I've encouraged him to join our team, and he's agreed to that. So he's putting in additional time at night when we meet after school with the teachers union. We're in the beginning of a very long process of uh, creating a new teacher's contract, hopefully for the next 3 years, starting July 1st. So I'm like, you need to take advantage of as many of these opportunities to learn, especially if you can get in a group, a collaborative group, a committee group. I do believe in committees. I think this is my athletic background speaking, but we have a lot of committees that support our strategic plan. So we have a finance and a building grounds committee that talks about that stuff. I have 3 board members that are there, and one's the chair, and I facilitate the meeting. I don't run the meeting. I want to talk about anything that might come to the board level at a board meeting. So I can sit there with 3 board members, and this young man joins us for some of this committee work. Besides finance and building and grounds, we have the other typical committees, curriculum. We added a safety committee. That's become very important. We feel that there's some things that we need to address, and we need to get people dedicated intentionally to discuss those topics. And we just started an athletic committee, and people are like, "What do you need an athletic committee for?" I go, "Well, if you knew all the phone calls I took about the head football coach last year, you would understand why we need a committee and talk about these things, right? Because athletics is very popular. They want to talk about the coach or the program or the score or the record." And I was getting and Sheboygan is a very passionate athletic background. They have a very strong athletic history, so I get it, and I think it deserves attention. So we started an athletic committee, and it's been quite helpful. It's open to the public. We have people come and present and talk, and we can dig down deep for an hour and a half or 2 hours once a month and talk about athletics or any of the other things. And it all filters to the school board meeting. So there are plenty of opportunities. I would just say, make sure if you want to be a superintendent, you're a building principal or you're a building administrator, reach out to your superintendent, tell them that this is what my ambition is. I don't think the majority of superintendents are not going to be, um, intimidated or concerned that you want to be a superintendent. Maybe it might be a succession planning. I'm getting to the point now where I'm getting close enough to retirement. I'm looking in my rearview mirror at the younger administrators we have. And ideally, I think we all know this. If we can start working on a succession plan before I retire and
Yep.
have somebody here that already knows what the strategic plan is and they can take the baton and start running with it, as opposed to somebody like myself when I came in, I didn't know anything and I had to do the listening tour.
Yep.
So if we can start being a little bit more proactive and when it gets closer to my retirement, let's start talking about a succession plan. And I got a couple board members interested. I'm not retiring any day soon, but let's talk about that instead of what typically happens. And that is some of these superintendents leave in the middle of the night. You don't even know why they left or what is going on. And then you got an interim and you got this and you got that. And I think that really sets a school district up for failure. if you're struggling with your board relations and you're struggling to have a superintendent in place for, you need to be there for 3 to 5 years if you're going to see any movement at all,
Yeah,
preferably longer. That's also a concern, I think, throughout the state and throughout the country.
absolutely. Well, Spencer, thank you so much for sitting down, sharing your time with us today, and telling us a little bit more about the work you've done over your years of experience and Cheboygan. It's been great, and hopefully we'll look forward to having you back on the show at some point.
I love to talk about education. Yep, and I think as you noticed, there's a lot to talk about, and very passionate about it. And I appreciate you letting me talk a little bit here through this medium. It's important to get the word out, right? It's
Yeah,
important to talk with folks and collaborate and continue to remember to do what's best for kids.
absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.